Hey guys, welcome back to KC3D Sparks. Today we are going to be continuing our custom dungeon build by also kind of continuing what we did last week and doing some items that we can actually put on these 3D shelves. So I wanted to get through as many things as possible. So we're going to try to hit quite a few things, but before I keep talking, let's just go ahead and hop to our layer that we had the bookshelf on. And of course, if you move the original, you can certainly just copy a new one and move it to an empty layer. So that way all your other stuff doesn't get in the way. But then you want to make sure that your units are still in inches. And I set the scale of my grid floor already to 1/4 of an inch. Not that it should matter too much for this one since we're going to be sizing it to fit in these bookshelves, but just, to keep it consistent. All right, so what we're gonna do is go ahead and just, obviously we'll just start with books first. To start our book, we're gonna go ahead and do Shift A, Mesh, and we're gonna do Cube. I'm gonna go ahead and just pull that out away from the bookshelf and immediately just size it back down. And I might actually pull that back. And then we'll kind of just get our generic book shape going. So I'm gonna do S and X. And I think I want my book to be kind of thick, maybe like that. Probably gonna want it to be shorter. So to compare to the shelves, you could always easily just hop into wireframe view instead. So I'm just gonna hit S. And we'll do maybe about this height. So they're still rather large books. That works better. And we'll also want to do S and Y. Let's get it more, maybe a little wider. Maybe like that. So focus in on that. Go ahead and tab into edit mode. You'll probably want to switch to face select. So you can grab 1, 2, and 3 faces. I typically like to do all 3 at the same time instead of 1, so that way your book will be ready in any direction that you decide to place it, whether it's stacked or upright on the shelf or leaning or anything like that. So let's just go ahead and hit E to extrude, and we're going to hit escape. Then we'll go ahead and hit S and X. Just start getting the edges created, so make them as thick as you want. And then I'm going to size along the Y, and I do this separately because I don't usually have them the same thickness, kind of have it a little bit different. And then of course we'll want to go ahead and we can just size along the Z a little bit to give kind of that slope just like we did with the Y. But then I'm gonna hit E to extrude again, size along the Z first, and then we will actually just push back this face slightly there, just to give us some extra depth there, because this will help create a little bit of roundness for our edges. Of course, you could always go in, add a subdivision surface modifier depending on how much you wanted to do, but I think I'm going to just do Control R, maybe do 3 loops, grab this edge, do connected. You're going to have to probably bring your circle way down and do just like this. There we go. So we get a nice curved edge, and you probably didn't see exactly what, so I'm going to undo that. So once our circle is small enough, you'll be able to gradually pull this out. There we go, to make that nice curved edge without having to create a subdivision surface modifier. So now we can just tab out of edit mode, and we have our basic book. Perfect. So we can start filling up our shelves with books. So I'm going to go ahead, pop some of these in there. And once it's on the shelf, you see like, oh, this is actually pretty shallow. So you could certainly do S and Y, scale that book up, and start duplicating them. I'm just going to make this book smaller in general, have that sit on the shelf, and start having fun. You can also rotate it to be leaning. I probably would want to do that the other way, but just giving some examples. So after our book, maybe you want to place an open face book over here. So let's go ahead and do Shift A. We'll go ahead and do another cube. I'm gonna bring it out again and just size it down. Focus in on it by hitting period, and we'll just go ahead and tab into edit mode. This one's a little bit more involved, so we're going to do Control R and add a center loop. I'm going to switch to vertex select mode and make sure our proportional editing is disabled again. Let's hit Z for wireframe, A for deselect everything, and border select those, X, delete vertices. Go ahead and add our mirror modifier, and we'll make sure clipping is attached. Perfect. And if you're modeling in front of the bookshelf and you notice that it's starting to get too in the way, which actually, let me go ahead and rename this. Just like that. Oh, except there we go. And we'll do this as open book. Definitely want to make sure you keep this organized. You can go ahead and just hide everything that you're not currently using if it does get in your way. So for our open Facebook, we're going to want to select everything, do S and Z and smush it. Also, I probably want this to be a little bit wider, more like that. I'm gonna do Control R and add in, let's try 4 loops. So all you have to do is just scroll up until you get the amount of loops that you want. I'm gonna grab this top edge here. I'm gonna go into front view and pull that up, but I'm gonna re-enable proportional editing so we can kind of pull it up without pulling up the bottom. So maybe like that. We're gonna do Control R, push that down, and since I already messed this up, you'll notice that my loop is also kind of trying to imitate this loop. So if you already did that, you don't feel like undoing it, all you have to do is hit SZ0, but you want to make sure your proportional editing is off because that will still mess it up. So SZ0, enter, and that will fix that for you. And if you're ever concerned that this line got messed up because of here, you can certainly, oops, just grab that SZ0, enter. Okay, for this one I do want to add that subdivision surface modifier. So let's just go ahead and add that now. Boop. And usually I like to crank it up to 3. It might be a bit much for this book though, so I'm probably just gonna do 2 since it's gonna be so small. I'm gonna switch to face select and grab, so do Alt right click this loop down here, and we're gonna do E to extrude, just hit escape. I'm gonna go into top view, do S and Y, size that out that way, and then all I'm gonna do is just grab this face separately and pull that out just like that. And then I will just grab this string of faces, do Shift E. I'm gonna do that to the bottom as well. So I can't do the shift or the loop select, so we'll just go ahead and grab those, do Shift E because I want that to be completely flat. And we'll also need this ring of faces, do Shift E to flatten that out. And we'll also just go ahead and switch to Edge Select, Shift E. You can do it all the way. I think I'll do all the way. I think that'll probably work best. And we'll also want to do Shift E like that. And maybe not there. We might be able to just get away with these two. And then, yeah, we can just grab this edge, go into front view, grab it, grab this one, and just start reshaping until you're happy with the layout. This one, however, we do want to sharpen and tuck down so that way it kind of matches what we were going for. So we kind of have our generic open Facebook, and we could sharpen this slightly. Yeah, I think that will work nice. So we get that kind of open book feel. Cool. So now we can go ahead and unhide our bookshelf and our books, and you'll notice that this book's a little large, but that's okay. All we have to do is just size it down and pop that in. Oops, go ahead and focus in on it. And push that in. And of course, you could always make this a lot thicker than it needs to be, so that way you can make sure that there's plenty for it to bullion onto the shelf with. I'm not going to worry about that too much just yet. I'm just kind of getting a feel of how I want my bookshelf to be laid out. Okay, so now that the open face book is made, you might want to make one of these full of scrolls or something like that. So let's make some simple scrolls. So for the scroll, you want to go ahead and just do Shift A, mesh, and cylinder. Now, the default cylinder is set to 32, and that's usually a little much for me. I usually like to work with something a lot less than that. Usually I'll pop that down to 12, but of course just work with whatever you're comfortable with. That part's pretty optional for this kind of model. I'm just going to scooch it over to the right out of the bookshelf and just do S and Shift Z to make that a little thinner, and then just do S to get the overall size. Just about there for now. Definitely not too picky about it, since we're just kind of getting the generic shape, and then we'll resize it after. So go ahead and tab into edit mode, and we're mainly going to pay attention to this top ring here. What I'm going to do is actually, and I think we could have picked that on the options over here, but oh well, we'll just do X and delete those faces. So now what I'm going to do is just switch back to vertex select mode, do Alt and right click for this loop here, and do E to extrude. Just size that in. We're going to do E to extrude again, and I'll pull that down, maybe go into front view, do E to extrude, size that down, E to extrude, pull it out, maybe size it in on its own as well, E to extrude, size it in, E to extrude, size it in and push it up, and maybe fill it in just like that. Typically it's not best practice for that. Usually it might look a little bit better if you do E to extrude, escape, Alt M at center. So we'll do that, and we'll just go ahead and kind of imitate that process, and then we can add some different layers to it. So E to extrude, size that in, bring it up, E to extrude, in, up, in, down, and maybe a little in, Alt M at center. So of course you can make as many of those as you want, or as few, whatever you feel like. Free reign there, and then you can kind of just start, whoops, grabbing your rings, rotating them, and having some fun. What the heck did I just do? Rotate. Maybe pull that back. You could always thicken that up. Control R, size that down. And we'll kind of imitate that. So rotate here, rotate this, and rotate that. And we can also do Control R. I'm going to do 3. Actually, we should be able to just get away with 1, honestly. Pull that up. Control R. Pull that up. Up. To kind of round out those edges. Yeah, we really don't need more than 1, honestly. Down. Oops, wrong direction. Pull that down, and 1 more. So now, oops, apparently I have caps lock on. We can get out of edit mode, and there's our basic scroll, which again is a little large. So what we can do, first things first, I want to make my scrolls lay flat like this, and then we can size them down. So I still wouldn't mind having them a little larger than normal, and honestly I kind of want this to be smaller and to go back further. More like that. Oops. Except I pulled it to the right instead of back. Fun. There we go. And the other thing is, since we went ahead and did both ends, but they don't match, we can always flip these around. So we also kind of, since only one will ever be seen, it'll look like we have different scrolls too, which will be nice. Let's pull that back and size that down. There we go. Ah, I like that better. Okay, so go ahead and start sizing these and moving them in place. So we could tuck one here. And I kind of want mine to poke out. I don't know about you. But you'll want to make sure it's tucked back into the shelf as well so the boolean doesn't do anything crazy. But I also want to do it in wireframe view so I can actually see where I'm placing them. So I can do Shift D, grab that, put another one there, but maybe I'll size that one down, push it down, and then it's already tucked back some. Shift D, maybe size that one up slightly, and just make it so look like they're super stuffed. And you can always distort them too once you have the placement done. So that way it looks like, yeah, they are actually smushed all together. So that way they're not perfectly round. So you can just do S and, actually let's grab this one, do S and X, smush that way, do S and X, smush that one a little bit, maybe do S and Z since that one just has stuff sitting on top of it. So just go crazy with it. And of course, like I said too, you could do R180 to get the other edge out. So we could do, go back in top view, R180. So that way you have either end out. Varying scrolls. Pretty simple. The next quick and easy thing to be placed on the shelf would be a crystal ball. So we can just do Shift A, Mesh, UV Sphere. Now this one I'm not going to change anything about. It's already segmented enough. We don't have to worry about anything. We'll just go ahead and size it down. And the thing is, it doesn't have to be a crystal ball. It depends on how you paint it. So you could also make this into like a globe or something like that. That's actually really large. We'll probably do more like maybe this. Maybe pop that down here. Or maybe on one of these shelves. Let's do that shelf. Yeah, that looks good. And for a basic holder, all we have to do is do Shift A, Mesh, Torus, size that down, grab that, and just line it up with our sphere. Just like that. Size it down, more like that. Push it into the shelf. And I don't really want it popping out, so we'll do it more like that. And then we can just size our sphere to fit nicely in there. Make sure it's centered by matching up those lines. Perfect. There. So basic crystal ball or globe or however you want to paint it. I'm just going to name it crystal ball, and for the torus do crystal ball holder. Awesome. Another thing you'll probably want to do is some potion bottles. So for potions, I would probably start with a circle. But of course you can start however you want, but with the circle, again, I'm going to knock this down to 12. So that way it just gives me a point on each edge. I'm sorry, a point on each axis. And it just ends up usually working nicely for me. So all we have to do, first thing, I'm just going to go ahead and size it down, focus in on it, tab into edit mode. And you can just start making whatever shape you want. Kind of like when you first start with Blender, sometimes people will just start making like different vases and stuff like that and extruding. So it's kind of just getting back to our roots with that. So if we just do E to extrude, I want to make that. So you'll notice, you know, definitely want to make the base first. So just push that down. I want to do Control R, size that out. Go ahead, do E to extrude. We're gonna size that way out. E to extrude. I'm gonna pull that up so I can make sure I get it back to the same size again. Just do Control R, size that out. E to extrude, size that in, pull it up. E to extrude, pull that up like that. Size that back out. E to extrude, E to extrude. Maybe just size along the X for the topper. Maybe pull it up a little bit. Like that. Maybe size along the Y slightly. And just pull that up. I don't know, something like that. Could be interesting. Of course, you could add a subdivision surface modifier, or let's do that to make it a little bit more unique. So you can just start making different potion bottles. Size that way down. And let's pop that on the top shelf. Make it a little large so that way our printer can actually print it. So obviously that's probably ginormous, and your character's probably, you know, once you put the mini next to it, you'll be like, oh my god, what's this giant bottle? But it'll be okay. And once it's placed, you could duplicate it if you want multiples, and then you could go into the top view, so you could start rotating them to make them look like they were just more organically placed. The last thing I'll get to is we're just gonna make like a little kind of trinket box, so that way if you have something more unique on the shelf, you could be like, oh, and in this box you find, like, I don't know, a key or a letter or something like that. So you know, it'll have whatever you want in there. So to do basically just a generic box, instead of literally just putting a cube on the shelf, we'll make it a little bit fancier. So we'll go ahead. I want mine to be a little bit shorter, but maybe not, I don't know, maybe more like that shape. And then I'll tab into edit mode. I kind of want mine to have a cool base. So we'll pull this out, size that, and then I want to add 4 loops this way, and we'll want to do 4 loops this way. And then I'm going to switch to face select, grab these 4 faces, do E to extrude, and pull those down. Kind of like that. And then I'm going to just go ahead and switch back to edge select. Grab that top. E to extrude, I'm just going to size it out. So it looks like our lid is kind of, actually, no, we're just going to pull that up, and then we could bevel this. So we'll go ahead and do Control R, grab this loop, size it in to kind of give that separation. And then I want to go ahead, grab this top again, do Control B for bevel, and you'll notice it just does this. What we can do to help with that is scroll up a few times to kind of make that a little bit nicer. And I might even do, you could do it this way too, to make that edge a lot better. And to make sure this shows, we could do that here as well. Getting a little excessive with it now, but I don't know, I kind of like this shape. And then I would probably paint just like a small design or something on top of it, but just to keep it simple. So this one, I'm gonna name to Trinket Box. and just pop that on the shelf as well. I put that down here. Make sure the feet are in the shelf a little bit, and we'll want to push it back. And maybe over. And then we could put some books around it, or maybe tuck some scrolls and that kind of thing. So I'm gonna go ahead, take a pause here, and I will see you guys, just place all my stuff, and then I'll see you guys in a second. All right, so that's probably good enough for now. It kind of shows you different ways of how you can take the same model and just position it differently so it looks like a different item. Because you'll notice the box, I went ahead and just sized it down and then stretched it along the Z-axis to make another just basic Trinket box. I mean, it's the same design, but just placed differently and sized differently to make a completely different item. So have a lot of fun with those. The potion bottles, I'm sure you guys can go crazy with, since that one's such a, fun thing to kind of mess around with. And you can leave it as a low poly, since it'll kind of just look like a crystal decanter or something like that. If you have any questions, be sure to just post those in the comments below. But also for the scrolls, I kind of left a bunch of empty spaces. You'll probably want to fill that up to help with your Boolean modifier and just the printing process itself. So just keep that in mind. Like, you might want to fill up those empty spaces in the shelf to not make a bunch of weird holes in the center. So you'll probably want to take care of that. Other than that, all of this will probably look super awesome in the dungeon. So let's go ahead and just grab everything looking pretty good. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or requests or anything like that, just leave them in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe so that way I know you like this video and series, and I will see you guys next week.